We're on YouTube now.
Okay, very good. Everyone's ready? Okay, today is Tuesday, August 18, 2020. School Committee of the Whole meeting, and the time is 5:06. Roll call of the members.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo,
He's muted.
Stacy,
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo,
I apologize here.
Mr. D'Ambrosio,
Here.
Mr. Ferranti,
Here.
Ms. Gravellisi,
here.
Mr. Sinella,
Here.
Ms. Ty,
Here.
Mayor Arrigo.
Here.
Okay, first item on the agenda, consent calendar, approval of the minutes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman,
Second.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, second agenda item is the warrants. Any questions for Matt on the warrants? Mr. Ferranti?
I-
Go ahead, Carol. Go ahead.
All right,
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
okay. As I was looking at the number of kids who are going to Everett, it occurred to me that we might, I'd like to know what sort of programs they're in. And then to ask a further question, Dr. Kelly. So what about the kids who are in private schools, the special needs kids who are in Shore Collaborative, or in the Franciscan School, or any of those places, or in a public school such as Everett? What's going to happen to them? Will they follow our schedule, or will they follow the schedule of the program that they are attending?
They will follow the schedule of the program that they're attending. When we tuition kids into other schools, whether they're public or private, that school takes over the role and responsibility of the educating of the child, and we pay the tuition for it. So they'll follow whatever schedules are set for each of those schools, and all of them, like us, are still in the process of figuring out exactly what the start of the school year is going to look like. We've been in touch with the administration in Everett. As you know, they're part of the 5DP, so we talk to them regularly.
Right.
And they find themselves in a similar situation to us, where they are hoping to have some programming for students with special needs and some other small populations of kids, but they're still in contract negotiations at this point.
Thank
And
you.
Diane, I can speak at Shore Collaborative. We just voted yesterday. We will start off remote and gradually go to a hybrid, depending on different levels for the elementary students. The adult learning, we're still trying to make a plan for. But right now, just like us, we only have maybe a quarter of the students maybe coming back.
And I don't know.
Not surprising. Mhm.
Madam Chair Lady,
Yes, Mr. Snella.
if through you to point of information for Carol, I was up in Beverly the other day and I see one of our vans go by 110. And then a few minutes later, I see another van going by 112, and I followed. I guess there was a school adjacent to where I was, and you had to see the care and nurturing of taking our children out and accompanying them into the school. I mean, everything that's going on. It looked like business as usual, except masks, and they had full gowns on and everything. But so I think I asked Diane about it, but it's the regular program that these kids are in, and that they're functioning even during the summer months. So it was very nice to see. I was very pleased with it.
Thank you, Mr. Sinella. Mr. Ferranti, did you have a question on the warrants?
Yeah, I just have three quick ones. Matt, on page 1, number 10, Nicole O'Neill. Looks like E-Rate Consulting Services. Can you just tell me what that is? Number 10.
Sure. Nicole O'Neill is the vendor name for the woman, her company that manages all the reporting associated with our E-Rate program. And so all the funding that comes back to us for technology purposes through that, she works with Jonathan Ferrara to make sure that all the T's are dotted and the I's are dotted and T's are crossed on those reporting we do for E-rate.
Do we pay her like once a year or?
Yeah, we pay her once a year. She gives us an excellent flat rate for those services. And so when the E-rate year is complete and the fundings come in, then she bills us.
All right, thank you. On
And
the
I'll
same
just point out that we typically get several $1 million over the course of years. It might be a $500,000 one year, $1 million the next year. It depends on what projects we do in IT.
Yeah.
We can submit those projects to E-rate for reimbursement, and we're at about an 80% threshold on reimbursement. The tricky piece that Nicole helps us with is not everything technology-based is reimbursable. And so she stays very current with the federal laws around E-rate and is able to advise us and help us make a plan, us, namely she and Jonathan, make a plan to kind of schedule that out.
Most of the money then is reimbursable, what you're saying then. True?
Say that again, Michael?
And most of the money, Diane, we get is reimbursable then?
Everything that goes through E-rate, we get reimbursed at about 80%.
Okay.
It gets tricky. There's like a level 2 E-rate submission that you can do where we get a lesser percentage for different kinds of technology services. It's mostly E-rate is about right now. It's about infrastructure, technology infrastructure, so wiring, cabling, fiber optics, all of that kind of work, switches, databases, that kind of stuff. It's not for things like Chromebooks. We have petitioned the federal government, as have all states, to change that in light of COVID so that we could leverage some of our E-rate reimbursement for, they call them end user products, which is any kind of a tablet or a machine. Right now, and even today, we've been working on this since the fall. But even today, that remains the case, that we cannot use E-rate funding to purchase end user devices.
All right, Matt, on the same page, number 25, EMS Lino, Link Q Inc., it says enrollment application for like about 18,000. What's that for?
Can you tell me the line again?
Number 25. EMS LINQ Inc., 18,920 enrollment application.
Yeah, that's, I'll have to pull the purchase order and send it to you. That
Okay.
is technology. It's like a district-wide technology account. So it would have been something between Sukuzo, Garcia, and Driscoll charged to that account.
Okay.
I think I know what that one is. I believe that's the online software we purchased so that new families to the district can register online instead of having to come to the PIC with a paper packet.
Okay. My last question, number 307, Retrofit Inc., 20,885. It says Clearwater Pass renewals.
Yeah, so that would be Jonathan Ferrara's infrastructure technology account. He not only purchases hardware stuff from Retrofit, but also licenses, virus protection software, subscriptions, those kind of things. So that would have been one of those purchases for the year.
Okay, thank you. All set, Susan, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferranti. Anyone else have questions on the warrants? Seeing none, next agenda item is the food service financials that are attached. Is Cheryl going to speak on that, Dr. Kelly?
Well, I think Matt is going to start us off,
Okay.
and Cheryl is here.
Yep.
See Cheryl.
Talk about both the food service financials and the CEP program that we're entering. So
Yep.
I think Matt can start us, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, the food services report is not a surprise. It's the first time we've seen one like this, but due to the March 13th shutdown district-wide, but the maintaining of the entire food services staff for the duration of the school year, the food services program incurred significant deficit. That's that $500,000 figure at the middle of that report. And it's just what you would imagine, basically the calculus of way less meals served than budgeted or expected prior to the shutdown and maintenance of staff. So you can see a deficit in the current fiscal year. And then down at the bottom is that fund balance in the revolving account. The primary importance is that that does not dip down into negative numbers at the given fiscal year. So we had inched to our highest fund balance at the end of 19 and were able to absorb last year's deficit in the food services revolving account. So that's that one-page food services program final financial report that we gave to you.
Thank you, Matt. Mr. Ferranti?
Yeah, thank you. Matt, two questions. Number one is, does those numbers reflect on what we did when we started passing out the meals to the schools? We started in, I believe, in April, or maybe earlier.
Yes, the state reimbursements figure includes the, drastically reduced number of meals that were given out during the lockdown.
Okay.
That's included in that number.
All right, my last question is, we did some purchasing of equipment, roughly 30,000. Did that go to one particular school, or where did that money go to?
Oh, man.
Was
I'm
it
gonna
a bunch of them then?
No, I'm going to say it's the Garfield school cafeterias, but I can circle back on that.
Okay.
We had intended to spend about $250,000 on equipment, and our first purchase was made and went through, and then we put a complete pause on that March 13th.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Diane.
Mr. Ferranti. Does anyone else have any questions on the food service?
Yes, Diane. And what do we have planned for what's coming up this year? So we're going to be working at a deficit. I mean, do we have to appropriate any monies? Because apparently the federal government's not adequate because we're preparing the meals, are we not, like we did before?
We are, and I'll invite Cheryl to speak on this in just a second after I do. But one of the things that we've been working on, so there's a couple of things that are going to come into play here. And the first is, the longer we are in a remote environment for learning, the longer this problem is going to, be realized by us. And as Matt indicated, we spent about $500,000 just from March until June. It was in June, on the last day of school, that we switched from the school meals program to the summer meals program. So this deficit that you see here only applies to the portion of the year that we were serving meals remotely from March until the last day of school on June 18th, I think it was. I can't even remember now. And so this is a telling problem going forward. If we were to stay for an extended period of time in a remote learning environment and had a similar level of participation, we'd obviously run through the 1.3 million that we have left in our reserve account very quickly, probably by December or January. So the committee, so two things are happening. Cheryl's been, number one, brainstorming about how we can increase participation as we continue in a remote environment. And one thing that we were talking about was going back to the plan that we had initially when COVID first happened, where we had programs in every single one of the elementary schools, and kids of any age could go to their nearest school to pick up their lunch. We think that will increase participation. Later in the spring, we were serving about 1,200 meals a day, but Cheryl anticipates having that proximity to people's homes could increase the amount of daily meals to about 3,500, which would help us because the federal reimbursement is all about how many meals have we served. And if we can get that number up to around 3,500, Matt and Cheryl and I looked at the numbers last week, and that would be roughly a break-even point. But that would be a break-even point if we resized our staff appropriately to cover those 6 buildings doing that lower volume of work. Right now, we have staff intended to prepare roughly 8,000 meals a day. That's not going to happen as long as we're in remote world, and as long as we're not serving as many meals a day, we really need to consider whether or not we can sustain this kind of a deficit, $500,000 for 3 months of services, in order to keep all staff employed. So I'm not saying that that's any kind of a decision that the school committee needs to make tonight, but it's a conversation that we need to have in order to make sure we're being fiscally responsible. And I'll just ask Cheryl if she can add to that, or if she wants to clarify anything, or if I misspoke.
Hi, everyone. Oops, I'm sorry.
No,
No, go ahead, Cheryl.
Everything you said is true, Diane. If we were to extend service to all of our elementaries, I would project that we would easily be able to reach the 3,500 meal a day mark. There's a lot of questions up in the air. Right now, I do understand that we are remote and there may be students in the building as well. So I think as more decisions are made, we need to kind of take all that into consideration so that we can build the program and the need of the program around what is needed for staff members.
Thank you, Cheryl. Does anyone have any questions for
Yes, Diane,
Cheryl?
if I may,
Excuse
please.
me, Mr. Sinella. Mr. D'Ambrosio had his hand raised.
Go ahead. Okay.
Thank you, no worries. Dr. Kelly, you said the break-even point for the current level of staffing is 8,000 meals per day.
No, I said the current staffing that we
3,500.
have right now is geared toward delivering about 8,000 meals a day. And I'd ask Cheryl to correct me if I'm wrong on that number. That's a combination of breakfast and lunch.
And do we have the break-even point for the current level of staffing right now?
Absolutely, with all staff. Bear with me one second, because I have a
No
lot of
worries.
data in front of me.
Thank you.
With all staff, it's about 7,200 meals per day. So that in the breakdown, because the way the reimbursements work, it does depend on the meal program. So all of these projections were based on 3,600 breakfast meals and 3,600 lunch meals. So
Thank
the
you.
combined total of about 7,200.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Just-
Mr. Sinella?
If I can just
Oh,
add, I'm
sorry,
sorry.
go ahead, Cheryl.
I just want to add one more thing. So as you are, looking at the information and looking to make decisions right now, and most of you may already be aware of this, that USDA has not put forth any other waivers saying that all students can receive meals for free. So the fact that our district is moving forward with being able to give our students that ability puts us in a great place. The only waivers that have been approved right now through USDA is allowing for non-congregate meals, which basically is saying that we can distribute meals to parents for the students. And we will also be able to distribute meals for multi-days. So we can build the program so that it makes sense labor-wise. And the things that we can discuss, but I would be proposing is like to do a 1 day a week distribution at those locations. And again, then to look at the labor figures and the forecasted meals, we can make an educated decision, I guess, based on where we are now and what we expect it to be.
Thank you, Cheryl. Mr. Sinella, you had a question?
Yes, we already had meals served at each school, so you should have figures for what was taking place when each school, they could walk to the nearest school and get a service. But I mean, I find it hard to believe that the federal government and even the state, whatever part they participate, are they expecting, I mean, there's other cities and towns in the same boat. Are they expecting them to be benevolent and to foot the bill? This just doesn't, I mean, it seems way out of line with expectations and everyone, yeah, but no one's financing it.
Mhm.
So again, I mean, you should have numbers from when every school did it. So that should help you decide on your staffing right up front.
If I can just share, I have to say that here we are in August and we're talking about a time frame because our meals program was at all of those locations for about a week and a half. And then there was a member who tested positive at one of the buildings. At that point, we chose to shut down locations. So our rates were higher in the city. And I really do not think that the participation we were seeing back in March and early April is what we will see now, because a lot of people are, going out more often. And I think if we go back to the end of March or beginning of April, everyone was really reserved. So I don't know that we can compare that data of when we were distributing at all schools to what we may be looking like come September.
So just as a reminder, Fred, at the very beginning of the program, when COVID first happened and everybody was quarantining, we were only doing about 600 meals a day across the district. And then as people started to come out more, and as people understood the food program better, and we became a little more consistent with how we were doing things, we learned as we went in those first couple of weeks. And that's when we got up to over 1,000, and eventually we were at about 1,200 a day. So.
Well, Diane, if you put full staff on and the numbers aren't there, do we own them, or is there, I mean, it just creates another problem.
It does. And that's why I'm saying, so we wanted to put this on your radar now. And we're certainly going to need to have a subcommittee meeting to talk more about employment status, because the cafeteria workers aren't the only people that we need to be thinking about. We need to be thinking about, especially if we're going to be in a sustained remote environment, and we don't know that right now, but if we're going to be in a sustained remote environment, we need to think about our crossing guards, our bus monitors, and other folks that we employ, and that we kept employed all spring. But if we're continuing to not have kids in, and it looks like we're not, and if it ends up looking like we're not going to have kids in for some time, then we need to have that conversation.
Okay.
Matt, do you want to add to that at all? Matt Cruz?
That was perfectly said. The numbers show that if we're stepping into a remote learning environment, then there's no way for us to not continue to incur deficits if we keep the entire food services staff employed the way that we had in the spring. And then that spills to some of these other staff members who their work is dependent upon school actually happening. Both are true.
Thank
Can I
you.
just add?
Yes, Mrs. Rizzo?
Yeah, I just wanted to update our school committee. The MASC, we received a letter from Project Bread, and they're sending it to the USDA. So I think it was just last Wednesday, we put together a letter similar to Project Bread, and it will be sent out to USDA, DESE, and all our congressional delegation. So hopefully it's not too late.
And superintendent signed off on that too, Stacy. I signed it.
Yes, I heard it too. Heard that too. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mrs. Rizzo. Mr. Ferranti?
Thank you, Susan. Cheryl, one quick question. Is it possible that we can do the 7,200 meals a week if we're on a remote learning? Or is that a little bit far-fetched, do you believe?
I think it's a high number, to be honest with you, but I'm going to say that figure is a stretch, because if we just think about opening up elementary schools, we would be talking 6 buildings. You're talking about 600 meals, right? Out of each building on average. So and again, in this situation, we need to still do the socially distance and distributing meals safely and doing all that. 600 meals at one distribution day at one building would kind of scare me. If that makes sense, like that's a lot of volume just for it to be being managed, by food services too.
And well, Cheryl, to
I-
get to the 7,200 number, you'd be looking at more like 1,200 meals at each of the 6 buildings.
Thank you. Yes, you are right.
She is the math teacher, yeah.
I haven't lost it all yet.
No, not yet.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think it's a high number to answer.
Cheryl,
that.
what's the realistic number then, you believe?
Realistic, I would say 2,500 would be a number I would love for the district to see.
Would that be breakfast and lunch or just breakfast?
That would be each meal, that would be for each meal.
Okay.
So a total of 4,200 meals a day, like 2,100 breakfast. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're figuring 4,000 meals approximately, give or
Yes.
take.
Yep.
Thank
Cheryl,
you,
I
Mr.
mean-
Ferrante. Excuse
Thank
me,
you.
Mr. Sinella, Ms. Ty had her hand raised.
Okay, I didn't know.
You'll be next.
Okay, I'll raise.
It's
Just,
difficult on Zoom.
I know. Just a quick observation, because as this pandemic gets deeper and deeper, the level of poverty seems to me to be increasing deeper and deeper as well. And so I think that you will have many a customer and be able to feed that, and there will be many of them who will be coming there looking for food. Certainly in all the food distribution places, particularly the 2 places that I know of, the 2 churches that give out meals and so forth, they have had a steadily increasing number of clients come who are in need. And I would think when the fall opens up and nothing has changed, that we will have plenty of people, and that serving 4,000 meals on a day would be very easy. Would be a very easy target to reach. Just an observation.
Thank you, Ms. Ty. Mr. Sinella?
Yes, Cheryl, what does the labor force look like? I understand towards the end of June, a lot of the people weren't too happy with working under these conditions. Have you done any kind of a survey to see how many people will be, if anyone has to be replaced, or?
There were at the time, at the end of June, in between some people that have left their positions, 14 inactive part-time food service worker positions that have not been refilled at this point. So we are down 14 from our normal number, which is approximately 96.
But will those people have to be replaced to do the scale of meals that you're talking about?
Not with the model of service that we are delivering.
Okay.
In other words, when you're having, 30 choices at your high school, it's very labor intensive.
Okay. All
This
right.
distribution program is less than that. And if I can just, Carol, I have to agree with you 100%. I do believe that come fall, as other services are being, limited to people, that we will see, unfortunately, more people in need of food. So I do believe that 4,000 number is attainable. I just don't know that we can quite reach that other number where all labor would be at a break-even
Right.
point for the program.
I know. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Ms. Ty. Did any other members have any questions for Cheryl? I just had one question, Cheryl, just for clarification. Earlier, when you were speaking, did you say that meal distribution would be 1 day per week at each school?
That is what I would propose, and I would propose,
Okay.
I would propose for it to be on a Friday as well, which would be the end of the week, just for some students that have, food insecurity situations. It would allow them to have food available on the weekend, and it allows the staff to be able to do better things in terms of what the food choices being offered, because they would have Monday through Thursday to prep.
So for that 1 day distribution, they would be getting 5 meals?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Um,
Or
or
10.
Ms.
seven.
Gravellisi,
Oh, yes, Ms.
Five.
Rizzo?
my
No.
hand's been up.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I do have a slight problem with the 5-day, only because we have a lot of families that have one refrigerator. So I know during, and Michael can speak to what I'm saying. I know when we did it for 3 days or 4 days and passed out lunches, a lot of people would say they couldn't take the milk because there's just no, they don't have enough room for it. So as much as I know it is easier, I don't think the families will be getting the needs that they, that are important.
Thank you, Ms. Rizzo. That's a great point.
Yeah.
If I can comment on that,
Yes, please.
you mentioned the milk, and I am in the process of looking into the availability of us being able to, instead of distributing, 10 cartons of milk, to actually be able to distribute a gallon of milk or a half a gallon, depending on the days of meal service that is required.
Ooh,
And
wow.
it's you had stated that it's easier, Stacy. It isn't about it being easier to distribute the 1 day a week. I honestly believe with the menu that I've put together and trying to keep the cost in line for the program, it's what makes sense for the program, to be able to give the students more of a variety. Like, we're looking to put together kits where it's like a make your own pizza kit, and yogurt and fruit and things like that. When we're serving a couple times a day, volumes of numbers, it's not easy to be able to do the types of meals we're looking to do. And we're looking to do these types of meals to increase participation.
And I apologize. My choice of words, like a lot of times, was not meant the way it came out. And what I do appreciate about your professionalism, Cheryl, is you are always forward thinking. So as, instead of giving 10 individual cartons of milk, looking at the gallon of milk, I have to applaud you for even thinking forward that much.
Thank you.
Cheryl is a great asset to the team, without a doubt.
Amen.
She is, and she got the
Mhm.
patience of a saint.
She
Mhm.
does. Thank you. Any other members? Stacy, did you have another question? Now I see your hand raised. Or is it just still raised from when I wasn't noticing it?
No, I'm
Okay.
taking it down now. Thank
Okay,
you.
just checking. Any other members? Ms. Ty?
Just a clarification. On Friday, you are giving out breakfast and lunch for 5 days?
Correct. With
Okay, because I thought when somebody said something, they were talking, that they mentioned only one meal. And I was quite sure that we were giving out 2 meals per day.
We are hoping that USDA comes forward with, when this COVID crisis began, they put through a waiver saying that we could feed students for 7 days. We're
That
hoping
would be
waiver comes-
wonderful.
We're hoping that comes through, but everything that I hear is leaning towards the fact it is not going to happen.
Oh,
So when we're building our breakfast, we're trying to build it with several items too, to make it what meets the guidelines, but where the students would have more items, instead of a bowl pack of cereal, that there would be other items that could potentially stretch out those meals over 7 days for them,
right.
while keeping the cost in line for the program, might I add.
Thank you, Cheryl. Do any other members have any questions for Cheryl? No?
Okay,
Okay.
I'm gonna sign off, guys. Everyone take care and be well, okay?
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next agenda item is financial reports attached. Matt, any questions for Matt?
I have one, Susan.
Mr. Ferrante?
Matt, on the first page where the snapshot is, and there's a transition relief awarded as a separate grant as a negative number. Can
Yeah.
you just give us a quick explanation of that, please?
Sure. When we voted the budget, we had assumed that transitional relief would have been given to us the same way it had in the previous year, which was as a part of the Chapter 70 funding from the state. What they did this year was instead, they gave us the transitional relief as a separate state grant. So we reduced our appropriation by that amount. And then we set up a separate grant for that amount. And then we charged $1,446,821 worth of Revere High School classroom teachers to that grant and netted the costs out with the reduction in budget. So just a simple accounting thing, but at the end of the whole game of the budgeting, the budget was less than you had voted, but the expenses remained the same. It was a different way of receiving the funding.
Thank you.
Any other members have questions on the financial report?
No. We have good management.
So basically, this report is saying that if considering current year funding only for FY20, we managed the year to pass through just over $7 million of carry forward into the subsequent year. That's a little higher than we had been telling you in the winter.
Yeah.
And we just, obviously, everyone spent a lot less money once the lockdown happened. All kinds of costs dropped. Substitute teachers weren't coming in, supplies and materials that were not needed. HVAC costs for running schools went down. Transportation, we were only paying a portion of the original contracts. So we generated about another $1.5 million of carry forward in those months of having a remote operation fully. So that's why you're seeing the 7 instead of the 5.5 that we had been talking about.
Trick's going to be this year, not last year.
Yes.
Trick's going to be this year's. I mean, history.
Every year is a new adventure, and this one's
This will be different.
yeah.
Any other questions on the financial report? No, seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, revolving account summary.
So we submit this report to the school committee superintendent once a year. It's just a snapshot of these counts that are revolving from year to year. They have different streams of income, different kind of buckets of program that they're funding. And the key here is that a fund balance from year to year needs to remain in the positive. And so that final column that you see of fund balance is either in black or been zeroed out in one case. And there's no deficits in the fund balances themselves, which would have had to have been corrected with appropriate funding of some sort. And then depending on the program and the year and the COVID craziness, there were surpluses or deficits in the individual programs. So this is your once a year revolving account kind of balance sheet that we have to provide to you.
Do any members, Mr. Ferrante?
Thank you, Susan. Matt, what happened with the early childhood tuition account? We're showing a minus about $250,000. Is that a normal? Is this just a one-time thing of what happened last year?
No, that's affected for 3 reasons. One is one of the early child inclusive grants dried up that had been doing some of that funding. The second is the shutdown in April. The school committee voted to return any tuition payments that had been made for the months of March, April, May, and June from these students. So the income was only 2/3 of what it would typically be. And yet we maintained the full staffing levels for the entire year. So that drove us into a deficit of $250,000 for that early childhood program for those three reasons. And then the tiny over deficit was zeroed out. That's why you see $0 fund balance at the end of the fiscal year.
So right now that account has nothing in it then?
That's right. And we're trying, still figuring out how will that function in a remote setting. There's some early childhood kids who need programming. What about the funding that comes in? But this is a snapshot as of June 30th that you're seeing here.
I thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Any other members have questions for Matt? Okay,
I'm
Yes.
just gonna re-articulate what Matt hinted to at the very end there, which is our early childhood teachers are funded through tuitions in part to run our early childhood programs. We cannot use our Chapter 70 funding for early childhood because Chapter 70 funding is for grades K through 12.
Yes.
So this is another area that the school committee is going to have to consider in thinking about staffing when we are in a remote environment. And like the other positions, if we're going to be remote for a short period of time, that's one thing. But if we're coming to the conclusion that we're going to be remote for a long period of time and we're not collecting those early childhood tuitions to offset the program, it's another area of concern for the budget.
Yes.
thank you, Dr. Kelly. Any questions? Okay, moving on. Next agenda item is the student activity account.
Oh, yep. So, wow, I have a lot of items for you tonight.
You do.
This is simply the new student activity regulations require that the school committee is aware of and approves both the maximum local allowable amount in a student activity checking account, and for the bigger schools that have individual student activities themselves, which activities will be active in the coming school year. So nothing's changed as far as local balance allowances. And I think there was a French society and another club that was added. And obviously the class of 2020 comes off and the class of 2024 comes on. So in your meeting at 6 o'clock, we just need you to take a formal vote to say, yes, we are good with these limits in student activity account checking accounts. And we are good with these activities being pursued at the high school through student raised money. That's what this is.
Through student raised money?
Right. Student activity means this money does not belong
Right,
to
everything when they collect and so,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Mhm.
often it's fundraisers,
Yeah.
but that also can include the solicitation of donations, grants, gifts by the clubs themselves. The
Yeah.
big thing to remember is it's their money, it's their programming. The principal, with assistance from me, is enabling them to spend it legally on the extracurricular activities that they want to be a part of.
Thank you,
Thank
Matt. Any questions from any of the members? No, I just said, so one question, Dr. Kelly, all of these clubs will be running remotely during the school year?
So, and that's another decision that I think that we have to look at, and Stacy might have some more information. I don't know if there's been an update from MIAA. I haven't seen one. The latest we heard from the commissioner, and we do have another meeting with him tomorrow, is that schools operating remotely cannot have athletic programs. Frank has been in touch with the GBL districts, and they're all leaning toward not having a fall program. There is some talk about moving fall sports to in between winter and spring sports. So it's something that could happen later in the school year. But another decision that we have to make is about athletics and clubs and activities. And if we're learning remotely, Do we want to run them all? Do we want to run select ones? What are they going to look like? I think that's another piece of the decision-making that we need to talk about.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Ms. Rizzo has her hand raised.
Thank you, Ms. Gravellisi. Yes, what Diane said is true. The Board of Directors will be getting together at 9 a.m. tomorrow to discuss any conversation that they had with the commissioner today. And so I'm thinking tomorrow is a date that we get 90% of the information or what ifs.
Thank you, Mrs. Rizzo. Any other questions regarding the student activities? Yes, Ms. Ty?
I have a question about the Nellie Mae funded activities. I thought the money for Nellie Mae had dried up this year. Is that so?
So
Yes, it is so.
yes, it is. So by leaving it on here, we're assuming that John Perella intends to spend down that balance in this fiscal year. So he wants the flexibility to do that by allowing the activity to continue for a subsequent year.
Thank you.
I'm not anticipating any deposits into that student activity.
Mhm.
Thank you. Any other members have any questions regarding the student activity accounts? No? Okay, moving
Okay, so
on.
Just make
Yes.
sure to vote, just make sure to vote that at your 6 o'clock meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, communications. I have here on the agenda, but I don't see it on the,
Yes. And I think
Oh.
I failed to get this to Robin last week, but
okay, thank you.
Um,
I thought, I didn't know where I was looking for it and I couldn't find it.
it's a
Next is,
postcard.
okay,
I'll give her this to include in the packets after the meeting. It is from a gentleman named Howard Halfant, who we all met last year when he visited a school committee meeting to honor his 5th grade teacher, Mr. Sinella. He was in the class, he was Mr. Sinella's pupil in the years 1971 and 1972. And he was writing to say how wonderful it was to see Mr. Sinella and be able to pay tribute to somebody who's been an inspiration to him after the 47 years, and that he is going to try to attend the November school committee meeting, but he realizes that it might not be in person, and if it's not, then he'll find a future date that he can attend. And I should say that this was addressed to Mayor Arrigo, myself, and all of the school committee members. And he said he wishes you all the best of luck and prosperous future. Running a school system is no easy task. So I'll include that with the package from Robin for after the meeting. But
that
I
was
did
very
include that
nice of him.
communication. Yeah.
Very nice.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly, for reading that. Next agenda item is enrollment update, which is attached.
Okay. So so these are our preliminary enrollment numbers. You can take a look at these and get a sense of class sizes and what we're looking at right now across the district. We do still need to add in, I believe, the high school number. Wait a minute. I believe they still need to add in the high school and Seacoast numbers. So the total that you're seeing there, 4,891 is just grades K through 8. And I know that they're working on collecting that high school data now. And of course, this does not account for, as you know, we finished our parent survey yesterday, and Dr. Galucci is currently looking at that data and summarizing it for principals. That's actually why he's not on the meeting tonight. His task is to do that work instead. But we're currently processing that data and seeing exactly who wants to come back to school. Principals are spending time this week communicating with families who didn't respond, as we did when we were making connections with families in the spring. I think you'll recall that we got in touch with all but 3 families. And that is our goal with the survey as well, to get our numbers that tight and actually have that conversation with every family about exactly what they want for each of their children. So principals are continuing to encourage families to give us the response, and Richie is working on collating the data at the same time. So I did want to give you that update.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Mr. Ferrante?
Diane, when is the last date that the parents can respond when the principals are starting to call people?
So they actually started calling them. They gave them a call on Friday, and on Sunday night, Dr. Galucci did another call home. Monday, yesterday, was supposed to be the deadline that we asked people to respond by. But we're going to work with individual families to help them get through the form and make sure that it's completed, so that we can get as close to 100% as we can. So, I mean, technically the deadline was yesterday, but if a family went onto the website and clicked the link today, they could still answer the survey.
Do you have any preliminary numbers, the percentage that responded?
I don't, to be honest with you. I didn't have it. I was out yesterday and I didn't have a chance to connect with Richie on it today.
Okay.
I know that when I talked to him on Friday, we were at about 3,500. So I'm hoping that the call that that principals did on Friday and the subsequent one that Richie did on Sunday might have increased that numbers a bit.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Any other questions? Okay, next agenda item is personnel items, new hires, retirements, resignations, and terminations. Any members have any questions for Dr. Kelly? Ms. Ty?
How are we doing on filling all positions? Are we close to being ready to have everyone on board, or are we still looking?
We still have a couple of openings. I'll let Danielle speak to that because she's been managing this quite ably. Most notably, the one position we still have to fill is the Wayland principal. And Dr. Mokaba and Dr. Galucci conducted interviews today. I know they have a couple more tomorrow, and Danielle can fill you in on that.
Yep. So we are currently, we have a handful of positions that we are looking to fill. We will continue to receive resignations, unfortunately, or requests for leaves of absence. And those will be what's popping up from now until school starts. We did conduct, as Dr. Kelly said, our first day of interviews for the Wayland principal position, and we have several scheduled tomorrow. Our hope is that the committee makes a recommendation to Dr. Kelly at the end of this week, early next week.
And classroom positions, and we're still looking?
Some of the newer positions that were posted today or are going to be posted some of them are classroom teacher positions, yes.
Just a curiosity, is this year significantly different from other years? I mean, in that you can't do, person-to-person interviews, but, do you have as many applications as you usually have, or are there fewer? Or are people reluctant to, it seems to me that it must be a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. I would say, for some of our positions, we still have 80 to 100 applicants.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. And for others, we have, the typical 30, 35 applicants. What is challenging for candidates is the emergency licensure piece. They're still working through that and getting their licensure granted. So I think for those new teacher candidates, it's been a challenge. Some of what we've heard from our existing candidate pool is that they're, uncertain starting a new district or potentially starting in a new district at a time like this is affecting people's ability to look for a new job. But, like I said, we've had some of our positions, our principals and hiring teams are looking through over 100 applications.
Danielle. All right, sorry, Carol, go ahead.
Just a follow through. Any help from DESE? And, is it just paperwork that's falling behind? And I hate to use the word waiver because that's a nightmare, but you know, are they helpful at all in doing this?
Yes, they have been very helpful and they've approved pretty quickly a lot of the emergency licenses that from the recent graduates or those in programs that were interrupted and just not able to get their license due to COVID.
Oh, right. Mhm.
Yep.
Thank you.
Danielle,
Thank you.
Danielle, any in-house candidates for the principal job for the Whalen?
We did not have any.
No, okay.
Oh,
Any other questions on personnel items? No. So moving on to the next agenda item is acceptance of donations or gifts. There are none. Next agenda item is school field trips, which there are none. And the last agenda item is regular meeting agenda items and miscellaneous.
And I don't think I have anything that's necessary to bring up in advance, and since it's 6:02, I'm going to suggest that we talk during the regular meeting about any items that are on that agenda. Unless one of you has a question for me.
Any questions from the members for Dr. Kelly? Seeing-
No,
Carol? No?
no, no.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion.
Second,
Roll
Thank
call,
you.
roll call.
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo,
Yes.
Mr. D'Ambrosio,
Yes.
Mr. Ferranti,
Yes.
Mrs. Gravellisi,
Yes.
Mr. Sinella,
yes.
Ms. Ty,
yes.
Mayor Rigo.
Yes.
Thank you.
And
Meeting
just a reminder
adjourned.
that you want to look at your email from Robin to get the correct new link to the 6 o'clock meeting.
Thank you,
Is there
Dr.
no
Kelly.
one? Okay.
Yes, it's in your emails.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.